Hi, this is Angela Maraca with Youth Advocacy, and today we're going to be talking about smoking and vaping. So, trying to understand the risks of tobacco and e-cigarettes. And we're going to start off by talking about what is in a cigarette. So, cigarettes contain hundreds of deadly chemicals, things like rat poison, nail polish remover, lighter fluid, cleaning products, bleach, industrial cleaners. All those things are in a cigarette. So when you light a cigarette, in the smoke is something called tar. And tar is really dangerous. It's found in most smoke. And when you breathe in tar, it sticks to your lungs, and that's what causes cancer to form within your lungs. Another really dangerous product in cigarettes is called nicotine. And nicotine is highly addictive. When people start smoking and they feel like they can't stop, it's because of the nicotine. That's what causes the addiction. And nicotine affects different areas of your brain, your attention, your ability to learn, your self-control. Nicotine affects how those things develop, especially when you're a young teen. It affects how those things form, and that stays with you for the rest of your life. So what are the different side effects from smoking? Your teeth and your nails turn yellow. You get wrinkles. Overall, you just really age faster. Smoking causes different fertility problems in both men and women. So females have a harder time getting pregnant, and then men have a higher chance of impotence. Your gums start to rot and you have bad breath. So like we just talked about, all those different chemicals within a cigarette, it's pretty much destroying your mouth because that's where you're breathing in all that smoke. So it causes all those things to rot. A lot of people also develop mouth and oral cancer from smoking. And then smoking cigarettes can also cause cataracts, which is something that happens to your eyes and causes you to lose your vision. So smoking during your teen years also really affects your lungs development. So when you're growing, when you're a teen, when you're a young adult, your body and your organs are still actually developing. They're not fully formed yet. So when you start smoking, it really impacts how those things grow, and it can cause different kinds of lung diseases that can last a lifetime, like bronchitis, COPD, a lot of different lung diseases just from smoking in those early stages when your lungs are still growing. So most people know that smoking is deadly. Smoking causes lung cancer, and that's true. One out of every 5 deaths in the US is actually caused by smoking. Smoking causes more deaths than alcohol, crack, heroin, cocaine, car accidents, fire, AIDS, suicide, and murder combined. So if you take all of those deaths and you add them all together, smoking still kills more people every year than all those things. So 5 million people die from smoking every year in the world. And most people know, like we said, that smoking causes lung cancer. But what most people don't know is that the #1 killer from smoking is actually heart disease. Smokers are 300% more likely to have a heart attack than non-smokers because when you smoke, it hardens your arteries, and this can also lead to strokes. Smoking also causes emphysema, chronic bronchitis, asthma, and like we talked about earlier, mouth cancer. So what is secondhand smoke? Secondhand smoke is when tobacco smoke is inhaled by other people who are not smoking the cigarette. And secondhand smoke is just as deadly as smoking a cigarette yourself. 50,000 people die every year from secondhand smoke in the US. So people can still develop cancer, heart disease, lung disease, asthma, different kinds of lung infections, all from just being around someone who smokes. And it's only been kind of recently, probably within the past 20 years, that secondhand smoke has been found to be as deadly as it is. When I was growing up, I remember going to restaurants and they would ask us if we wanted to be in the smoking or non-smoking section. I used to be able to smoke on planes, used to be able to smoke on school campuses. So smoking used to be much more common than it is today. Only recently, there's been more and more laws that prohibit where you can smoke because they realize you're not just doing damage to yourself, you're doing damage to others. And even today, recently they passed a law that you can't smoke in the car if someone is under 18 in the car. So you can't be around someone smoking because it is just as deadly. So the cost of smoking, if you smoke one pack of cigarettes every day, you will spend about $30,000 on cigarettes in 10 years. And when we talk about the cost of smoking, we're not just talking about how much it costs for a pack of cigarettes. We're also talking about what it costs you in the long run. So like we just talked about, smoking causes so many different kinds of illnesses. And for example, cancer treatment costs about $10,000 every year, and that's if you have insurance. So you're spending this money on cigarettes, and then in the long run, you're also going to need to spend all this money on your treatment. Because like we mentioned, there are a lot of different diseases that you can get from smoking, and smoking is not a quick killer. Most people will find out they have cancer in their 40s, 50s, 60s. So it does take some time to develop and kill you, but it will be something that does kill you, and it will be in a very painful and uncomfortable way. We also like to mention that the tobacco industry's main advertising is really geared towards youth and teens. So because smoking is addictive, because of that nicotine, once these companies have a consumer, a smoker, they don't really need to do any more advertising to keep them. They're addicted. They're going to keep smoking. So all of their funds for advertising is really poured into kids and youth because they're going to be their new customers. So a lot of money is spent every year. $9.5 billion every year is put towards advertising to youth. And a lot of this advertising is actually really subtle. So things like when you see someone smoking in a movie, so they're paid to do that by tobacco companies. So it doesn't really look like your average ad or TV commercial. It's much more subtle. And we just like for you all to start noticing those things. So when you see people smoking in films, when you see celebrities smoking or people in music videos, a lot of the times they're paid by the tobacco industry to do that. So now we're going to talk about smoking in pregnancy. So most people know that it's really not safe to smoke while you're pregnant, but many people don't know why. And when we're talking about smoking, we're talking about both cigarettes and marijuana. So anything that you smoke that the child will be taking in. So some things that can happen from smoking while pregnancy is a miscarriage. So the baby passes away before it's born. SIDS, which stands for Sudden Infant Death Syndrome, and that happens after the baby is born. It happens up until a year. So your child could be born, could be 6 months old, and because you smoke during pregnancy, they just suddenly pass away. And SIDS is also caused from smoking after the baby is born. So if a baby is around cigarette smoke or marijuana smoke and it's breathing that in, it can cause them to pass away. Smoking during pregnancy also causes a lot of birth defects. There's a lot of physical disabilities like cerebral palsy, which means you don't have full control over your movements and you have to be in a wheelchair. Premature birth, which means that the baby is born very early, which most likely means that a lot of its organs and body hasn't fully developed yet, so it has some issues with that. It can also cause hearing and vision problems in the baby. And then smoking during pregnancy can also cause a lot of mental and learning disabilities. Babies are often born with low intelligence, ADHD, and when they get older, they notice that a lot of these children have emotional and behavioral disorders, as well as suffer from addiction of other substances. So again, it's incredibly dangerous to smoke while you're pregnant, but also be around someone who's smoking while you're pregnant. Like we talked about with secondhand smoke, you're still inhaling that smoke in some way. So being around anyone smoking cigarettes or marijuana before or after the baby is born is incredibly risky to your health and the child's health. So now we're going to talk more about e-cigarettes. And e-cigarettes have become very popular lately. They were originally made to help people quit smoking in what they thought was a safer way. So most cigarettes contain a combination of different chemical ingredients, but also nicotine. So like we said, nicotine is highly addictive, and nicotine really affects the development of the brain that has to do with your attention, your ability to learn, and your self-control. And more recently, e-cigarettes stopped really marketing to adults who were smokers and started marketing to teens. If you look at the picture in the bottom right corner, that is an advertisement from Juul, and it's definitely geared to a younger audience. So they weren't really getting as many clientele as they were hoping for. So like the tobacco industry, they started marketing to youth. And Juuls actually have double the amount of nicotine that cigarettes do. So one Juul pod has 20 cigarettes in it. So that's about one Juul pod is about a pack of cigarettes. And so again, it's really risky for teens to use these products because their brains are still developing, they're still growing, their lungs are still growing and developing. And so nicotine definitely impacts that. So more recently, a lot of cities and states have started banning vaping because of the damage that they cause to people's lungs. Just in February, a 15-year-old teen in Texas passed away from vaping. 68 people have died so far, and almost half of them only vape THC. So it's not only just vaping products that are substitutes for tobacco, it's also all these new THC marijuana vaping products. So far, 2,800 people have been hospitalized from vaping. And we want to focus in on hospitalized. So many other people have been affected negatively by vaping. My sister personally was vaping both THC and as a substitute for cigarettes. And she developed asthma. She got bronchitis 3 times in 2 years. And then she also developed pre-COPD, which is a lung disease. So she wasn't hospitalized, but she was infected by vaping. So when we say 2,800 people have been hospitalized, these are major issues, major health issues that are causing them to have to go into the hospital. So it's everything from people having to get a double lung transplant, so their lungs no longer work, they need to get new ones from someone else, to chronic lung bronchitis and emphysema. And these things can happen in a very short amount of time. So unlike cigarettes, which, we see a few years it takes for them to have any side effects, vaping can happen in a very short amount of time. Some people only vaped for a couple weeks, a couple months, and they passed away or they had some major health problems because of it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about vaping marijuana. A lot of people feel that vaping marijuana is a safer alternative to smoking marijuana because you're not using wraps that cause lung damage, and you're not actually igniting this, you're not breathing in any traditional smoke that contains tar. People feel like it's a little bit safer. But vaping marijuana is just as dangerous for all those reasons we just talked about with vaping products and really not knowing the reason behind they're causing all these deaths, as well as marijuana, the THC in marijuana really affects teen brains more than anyone else. So during your teen years, your brain is what we call under construction. So major areas of your brain from about 13 years old to 18 years old, they're growing and developing. And so THC causes permanent damage to your memory, your learning, your decision-making, your intelligence, and also your impulse control. So in states where it is legal to buy marijuana, use marijuana, the age to buy it is 21, so same as drinking, because they realize that THC does affect teens and young people much more than it affects adults. Just because of the sole reason that your brains and your bodies are still growing. And that isn't, your brain is developing until 25. So it is very dangerous to use these substances, especially in the 13 to 18-year-old bracket. So that's the end of our workshop for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us at Youth Advocacy ATX. We're on Instagram and Facebook. And please feel free to reach out with questions or comments about the workshop. We love hearing feedback and hope you all have a great day.